5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Puck short.
Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new episode of the One Puck Short podcast. It is Wednesday the 16th of December 2015 and as always I am your host Rob McGregor. Former Edmonton and Los Angeles forward Patrick O'Sullivan will be joining me later on the show to talk about his book Breaking Away, that Players Tribune article and his ongoing fight to help deal with domestic abuse at home, at the rink, across the sporting spectrum and beyond. So looking forward to having Patrick on later to talk about some pretty serious work he's doing there. Just some news and notes from around the NHL before then. The Pittsburgh Penguins traded Rob Scuderi to Chicago in exchange for Trevor Daley earlier this week. Now, that's a pretty solid move, I think, for the Penguins. They retain approximately a third of Scuderi's salary, $1.125 million will remain against their cap until next summer when Scuderi's deal would have expired. In Daley, they gained a 32-year-old defenseman who did pretty well in Dallas and had a pretty decent reputation moving from the Stars to the Blackhawks. He was part of the Patrick Sharp deal. Didn't quite work out for him with the Blackhawks, and so he's moved on to Pittsburgh, which is timely for the Penguins. As I said, he's 32. He earns $3.3 million. He's a decent skater. He's a decent puck mover. And for a team which is currently without Chris Letang, that's a pretty valuable acquisition at this point because Marc-Andre Fleury is also expected to be out for around 1 to 2 weeks with a concussion. Matt Murray's been called up from the AHL. Murray had a fantastic year with the Wilkes-Barre Penguins last year. Obviously, the Pens opted to go with Jeff Zatkoff as backup this year to allow Murray a little bit more time in the pro leagues. But he'll get a chance with Fleury. As I said, Daley coming in is timely, I think, for the Penguins. We touched on the coaching change on Sunday's episode with Mike Sullivan replacing Mike Johnston. But I think more than that, some interesting comments from the Pittsburgh Tribune Review's Rob Rossi on Hockey Central on Monday. He talked about really the composition of this team. The defence obviously has been a big talking point both before and still following the Daley trade. But he also talked about Sidney Crosby changing as a player. He's 28 now, and Rossi sort of made some great points about how Crosby couldn't really be quite the same guy he was when he was a younger man because, as I said, at 28, he's been in the league for about a decade now, and he used to play, again, I'm going to use Rossi's term here, he played like a grinder's game, but with an extremely high skill set. So stuff he did before, digging in corners and battling for pucks, he can't maybe do that in the same way anymore, just the wear and tear on his body. Obviously, he's had a couple of high-profile injuries. He's just not capable of quite playing that same way anymore, and he needs to figure out what sort of player he is moving forward for this team. There was also some talk about the lack of, should we call them glue guys. Max Talbot was used as an example, Bill Guerin, Sergei Gonchar, people who've been around the league for some time, have the ability just to calm things down when maybe panic risks setting in, and the Pens don't have those guys right now, and that's a problem for this team, and they don't seem to quite have the same resolute spirit maybe they once did to pick themselves up when the chips are down. And so the Penguins remain, I guess, on watch for a lot of people around the NHL, just with the coaching change and the trade. They've got a little bit of cap space available, $1.3 million, so whether they make more moves down the stretch, I don't know. It depends where they are in the standings, I guess. And some people had them in the automatic qualification spots in the Metro. Others thought they might be a wild card. Others had them on the bubble. I think they'll make it. I think things will even out and they'll make the cut. And I kind of had them down as a potential cup finalist. They were my pick from the East because I thought they'd squeeze in and then just one guy, Malkin maybe, for example, would just take over and really carry the team forward on a run. And we kind of see that a lot in the spring. One team just catches fire at the right time. The Kings did it a couple of years ago. They were the 8th seed and they won the cup. And I didn't see a reason maybe Pittsburgh couldn't do that if Fleury played the way Fleury has been over the last couple of years. He's been excellent. And one of those big names like Malkin caught fire. So, but right now they're on watch. I think Jim Rutherford at some point may be on the hot seat because, again, composition's a problem here. I know he's inherited some of this team from Ray Shero, but he's been in the role for a short time now and had opportunities to maybe change things around. Obviously, the big move for Phil Kessel maybe hasn't panned out right now. There's a lot of dollar still tied up in a small handful of players. Another big talking point from the last few days, Ryan Johansen was benched by Columbus Blue Jackets coach John Tortorella in the Jackets' 5-1 loss to Dallas. This seems to be an ongoing story, what Ryan Johansen's future is in Ohio. It's really hard to read, because there is a danger that people read too much into a situation. Guys have been benched before on other teams. Obviously, Matt Duchene was kind of in the trade rumour mill at one point after a comment from Joe Sakic, and since then Duchene has been absolutely outstanding for Colorado. This is an attempt to light a fire under Johansen's ass. Maybe it works. Or Johansen, sorry. Under his ass, maybe it works. Maybe that's kind of what they needed and what they wanted from John Tortorella, to come in, kick a few garbage cans and light some fires. Losing Sergei Bobrovsky is not ideal, but they need Ryan Johansen to be the best he can be if they are to advance. If not, I'm sure there'll be plenty of takers, and sure, if there is talk of a decent or top-tier centre being available, Dave Poyle will be on the phone. I mentioned Bobrovsky's injury there. Use that as a good segue. Just in general, at the moment, there's a little glut of goalie injuries around. Mike Smith is going to have a core muscle surgery. He'll be out approximately 8 to 10 weeks. We've also got Carey Price, of course, on the shelf. James Reimer's hurt. So there's a few guys out. Bobrovsky, again, I mentioned already. And I know a few people were surprised that Anton Khudobin cleared waivers, because he's a useful NHL goalie in a backup role, maybe a 1B role on a good team. And there's a few clubs that people think could use that kind of help. One of the Twitter discussions I had pointed to the teams with the lowest save percentage in the league. Well, you've got Carolina at the bottom. Fair enough, I think we're all in agreement Cam Ward's career is probably done in the NHL. But Carolina have Eddie Lack, who's starting to play a lot better again. The numbers aren't perfect, but he has found his natural game again. He's playing a little deeper in net rather than trying to be the same aggressive-esque style that Cam Ward uses. Lack's just playing his game again, and he's looked better for it. And obviously the Canes let Khudobin go not that long ago. So I don't see the sense of them bringing Khudobin back when Lack is their guy moving forward, especially given where Carolina are in the standings. They're 25th overall, if I remember rightly, right now. So if you maybe move to 23rd, okay, well done, but you've moved 2 places further down the draft and you're still not a playoff team. So I don't see the sense of maybe fixing that particular hole. It's the same for Columbus, whose season, I think, as much as the Blue Jackets probably hate to admit it, is kind of a write-off because they're just too far out of the race. And it's the same for a couple of others that were mentioned is, why are you going to go chasing someone who, granted, he will make you better, but if we're really frank, you don't necessarily want to make you better, because that's going to move you further away from someone like Austin Matthews or Sean Austin Matthews or another high pick, because there are good players out there and available in the draft this year. So why do you want to drop further down that draft when you've got a shot at a guy who could really, really make a difference to your team? And that's the bit I struggled with, is people talking about, I'll get Khudobin in, he'll help you. Well, maybe they don't need help. Arizona really a playoff team. I know they're in there right now, but not many people expect them to hang there. And I must admit, I can kind of understand that. I don't think they're a playoff team in the long run. I think they'll fall away, whether Smith was healthy or not. And somebody did put on Twitter, let the kids do what they do. Let them be these exciting firecrackers that get the fans off their seat. But ultimately, just let yourself drift away, get another high pick, and have that really strong core of good young guys, because Ekman Larsson's still got plenty of years left in him. Winnipeg are another team that were mentioned. Obviously, Pavlich and Hutchinson didn't have the best start to the year, but they've got 2 fantastic prospects in Connor Hellebuck, who's up now with the team, and also Comrie. People dismiss Comrie a little bit because his numbers aren't great in the minor leagues, but he's a very talented goaltender, and numbers don't tell the whole story. Nashville's save percentage is, I think, ranked 24th. It's .903 combined. But Pekka Rinne, even strength, has been solid. He had a bit of a skid, but he's been much better the last couple of games. Carter Hutton's numbers aren't great, and that drags everything down and gives you kind of a false impression, I think, of where a team is at. I mean, they've got their horse. Pekka Rinne is the Preds number 1. Adding Khudobin doesn't add anything, I don't think. Hutton's a decent backup goalie in that situation. Likewise, Curtis McElhaney would be ordinarily in Columbus. Bobrovsky didn't have a great start to the year, but he's their horse. And this is the thing, why would certain teams rock the boat by adding a Khudobin when they don't really need to? It's either going to compromise their chances of getting a higher pick, or it's just going to cause rifts that don't need to be there particularly. One last hockey-related note, non-NHL this time, it's the Continental Hockey League's plans to expand into China next season. There will be a team playing out of Beijing. I did a short piece on it on the blog yesterday. You can find that at onepuckshort@wordpress.com. But the gist of it is, this is the KHL expanding their horizons. They wanted to be a global league. They wanted to be a rival to the NHL. Up until now, they've basically been the European Super League, the top tier in Europe. This is their chance to actually become properly kind of a global league. Plus, of course, this has been a league that has struggled financially, in terms of individual teams and other things. It has some bad press over the years, mostly justified given what you hear. But this is a chance to tap into really an unknown hockey market, but one with a massive economic engine behind it potentially. So if they can really tap into that Chinese economy, that's a big opportunity for the KHL and a big opportunity for hockey globally. And I wonder how much the NHL will be watching this, seeing how this Beijing team does, especially the Olympics there in 2022. Because if the KHL can gain some traction, the NHL will feel they can too, and look to further boost their own revenues. One Puck Short is brought to you in association with Eastside Hockey Manager, an in-depth ice hockey management simulation brought to you by Sports Interactive and Sega, developers of the world-famous Football Manager series, available now for PC via Steam. Joining me now on the One Puck Short podcast, a former NHL forward whose book Breaking Away was billed as a harrowing true story of resilience, courage and triumph, and his Players Tribune piece caught the eyes of the hockey world recently. Please welcome to the show Mr. Patrick O'Sullivan. Hi Patrick, how are you?
Good, Rob. How are you doing? Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for coming on. It's great to get you on. I know obviously you're quite busy at the moment with various appearances because obviously, as I said, the book's been out for several weeks now, and it was your Players Tribune piece recently which really caught the eye. It was a very frank retelling of the physical abuse you suffered at the hands of your own father, and you even referenced incidents that occurred in car parks outside rinks that other people have witnessed. And one thing that struck me from the piece was that you said you weren't writing the article for your father, it was for those people in the car park. And is that what's driven both the book and the piece, is a desire to step in and try and educate people and say, you need to step up when things like this are happening?
Yeah, that's exactly it. That's really the motivation behind me doing the book and any of the other, various interviews that I've done since then. I think for a long time, people kind of looked at, how other people raise their kids as kind of their business. If it's not going on in my house, I'll, kind of keep my nose out of it. And, for a child, it takes more than just the parents, I think, for the kid to have a happy and safe life. And I think it's the responsibility of other parents, around their kids. And it's not hockey. You could apply it to any sport or even, other things that kids are pushed in extremely hard. That happens in music and education and all that stuff. So, I just think people need to be aware and kind of look for patterns. And oftentimes it's easier to notice the kids' behavior and the things they're doing because the parent or the abuser, they know that other people think what they're doing is wrong or would be wrong. So they're calculated, and that was my experience. And I think, a lot of that stuff goes on behind closed doors. So I think it's important just to be vigilant. And if you see anything, to contact the police or any kind of social services. And, this day and age, they'll look into it and make sure that, if there is something wrong, to really take care of it. And if there's not, then that's the best case scenario. And the kid's safe and healthy. And that's really the ultimate goal when you notify somebody else in the first place.
Yeah, one of my previous jobs, I worked with 5 to 13-year-olds in deprived areas of my local city. And one thing my colleagues always struggled with was looking for those signs. And as you said, in a lot of cases, it is no differences in the children which are noticed first because some people see these kids on a daily or weekly basis. And as you said, it's sad that people did perhaps dismiss it as it's not in my house. Because obviously it leads to far more serious consequences that you've been talking about recently, as you said in the book. But Is there a risk that too many people maybe dismiss using hockey as the pertinent example, that hockey dad thing? They just dismiss it as a guy getting a bit too wrapped up, and it's nothing, and they kind of don't think twice about it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of been the attitude or the outlook in the past. Hockey's such a physical game and kind of a macho sport. You don't have a lot of players, that are in the NHL or any professional league. When they do interviews, it's very, it's very guarded. There's not a lot of emotion, and I just think that kind of filters down into, kids sports, kids hockey, and the parents think that, they need to have this tough kid or this the way that they're going to treat their kid in order to, make them a better player. And, it really couldn't be further from the truth. I think if, there's kids that make the NHL that don't even have a dad. So, it's really almost irrelevant as far as what the parent is saying or the extra stuff that they want their kid to do, whether it's, training or extra ice time or anything else. I mean, it really just doesn't matter that much in the end. And I think if more people realize that, they could maybe take a step back and change some of their behavior. And that's my goal. And that's what I'll be doing, with my program that I developed to travel around and kind of speak to these people and get to them when their kids are young before any of that stuff could start.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you mentioned in the article that you learned more really about the hockey skills and things that took you to the NHL just by playing with a stick and a ball and basically having fun.
Yes, that's really, I mean, how everybody gets better. It's the free time. It's the time when the kids are practicing or doing whatever they're doing, and they don't even realize that they're getting better. The older kids get, obviously, the more interest they develop, and the kids decide to, sacrifice the social time with their friends at school, or, some of the other things that kids can be interested in. And that's really why the guys that do make it. It's not because they had the parent that had them doing extra things or anything along those lines, because a lot of times the kids, they don't really want to do it, or they're not engaged mentally. And, that with just like anything else, if you're not into it, you're not going to get anything out of it. And I think that's the part that the parent has a hard time seeing.
Sure, yeah. Obviously, it was something that followed you all the way to the NHL draft, unfortunately. And you referred to the time on ice as your safe space, really. And obviously, you had 4 good years with Mississauga Ice Dogs on the ice, who weren't a great team when you joined, but you helped them become sort of relevant again, and that kind of transition. But it was really something that never went away for you, unfortunately.
No, I mean, as far as the abuse stuff?
Yeah, just that. Well, obviously, the backstory, because guys around the sport kind of knew your history in a sense. Yeah,
well, you're right. I mean, once my father was out of the picture, the story, it's not like it disappeared. I mean, people, I talked to almost every team before I got drafted, and most guys have maybe 10 to 15 interviews with teams, and I almost, I think I had 28 or 29. Mm-hmm. So, it was everywhere I went, and even once I made it, and if I had been traded, I go to a new team, and it's always the first thing that, gets brought up. So, yeah, it was something that it wasn't a factor as far as being in contact with my dad, but to have it be constantly brought up, and, anytime, I just always felt like people had that in the back of their minds, if I had a bad game or, this guy's he's got issues or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, and that's really kind of what happens to people who experience certain things like that. Like they, if the kid moves out of the house at 18 or whatever age, they go to college or they move out and they go to work. Yeah. The stuff that happened to them doesn't disappear. It causes lifelong problems, and they have a hard time maintaining relationships, both work-wise and also, with friends or their significant other. It's really a lifelong punishment. which I'm sure you obviously understand doing the work that you did.
Yeah, and it's, as you say, these things can, well, as we've just discussed, they can follow a guy around. I mean, you played 334 NHL games with the Kings and Oilers, Hurricanes, Wild, and the Phoenix Coyotes. What kind of support did you get from any of those teams, or did anybody sort of step in and kind of try and help you out when things were tough? Or
Well, that's part of the problem, and another message I'm trying to get out is that I didn't get help from anybody. Nobody came to me, despite the fact that they obviously knew my backstory, because I had talked to every team almost before I was drafted.
Yeah.
So, it was weird that way. It was almost like they didn't want to get involved for one reason or another that I haven't been able to figure out. But, there needs to be something in place so that guys feel comfortable. They don't feel like, if they ask for some help, that they're going to be, red flagged or, looked over for someone else that doesn't have that stuff. And, there's a plan, there's a program in place for guys that have substance abuse problems, but, and those guys get second, third, fourth chances, and they should, because, people can rehabilitate themselves and change their lives. But as soon as it's something that has to do with, emotional needs or anything like that, it's almost like everyone backs away and tries to separate themselves from that. So that's something that needs to change for sure.
I mean, obviously you mentioned the substance abuse program there. We've seen Zach Cassian reactivated recently. He was in that very program. And I mean, it's part of the problem perhaps that not just hockey players, but maybe sportsmen in general, sometimes the humanity is stripped out of them, and they're seen as a commodity or an asset which can just be moved around. And if they're not performing, you unplug them from the lineup and plug someone else in, and that kind of human element is lost. Is that part of the problem, do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean that's how professional sports is worldwide, really. I mean, it's a ruthless business. In a way, it's basically a meat market. If you're not performing, they're going to get rid of you and find somebody else who can. But, along those same lines, that's even, to me, when I look at that situation, it's even more of a reason for the teams to be interested in the people that they're employing and paying a lot of money to make sure that they're healthy, not only physically, but mentally, because if they are, you're going to get more out of your investment. Yeah. And that's the part that's missing. And I don't know why that is. I think it has something to do with sports in general being something that, like I said earlier, it's a macho thing. Nobody wants to admit when they're hurt. Guys play when they're hurt. And, at the end of the day, though, the team, simply if they looked at it financially, if they want to get the most out of their investment, you figure that they'd want to make sure that their guy was going to be able to perform his best, and you need to be able to check all those boxes off away from the field or the ice or whatever to make sure the guy can do that. So again, that's something that needs to be changed. And there's a friend of mine that's kind of, his name is Dan Carcillo, and he's got a charity, and I'm sure you've heard about it, in support of Steve Monador, who passed away. And it's along the same lines of supporting guys and mental health and how important that is. And I think our society's finally trying to, or I think society's come a lot further with recognizing that than a lot of sports leagues and organizations have. So they need to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we kind of focused on the very top, the pro leagues there, but even going back to kind of junior hockey, even college sports now, they're so high profile, and in some cases the money involved is so big, they need guys to perform as well. So I mean, you've got teenagers who are expected to perform, and kind of the same problems exist. So if somebody isn't there for them when they have these needs, they're never going to go away, and they're just going to. The danger is they're going to grow and get worse for these young men.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. It should start a lot earlier, because if you wait till the guy's a professional, it's too late. There's too many things that have happened, too many, maybe bad habits, or it's hard to go, start fresh with somebody at maybe 25 and go from there. So, it's a good point, especially in America, the college sports. There's so much money that's made off those kids, and it's everything about it is basically professional, except the person performing doesn't get any money out of it. So everyone knows about the various attempts at trying to get college athletes some money or some compensation, if for no other reason than the amount of money that they bring in, especially in American football. And it really does need to start at the bottom and go up, because like I said, it's too late if you don't, the guy doesn't get any help when he's 25, 30. I mean, most guys are ready to be done playing around that age. It's just such a short career that, it would be beneficial for the organizations and also the players to maximize the time that the guy has.
Yeah, I mean, where does the NHLPA kind of stand in this? Because we've mentioned substance abuse programs, and they're heavily involved with trying to support guys through things like that. But mental health is a more prominent subject in the last sort of couple of years, really, I guess, both here in the UK and North America and cross sports in general. And it's more widely accepted that it's, for lack of a better term, okay to talk about it. Where does the NHLPA fit into this sort of thing?
Well, unfortunately, there wasn't really much there either in the way of, getting any help. I think there's a little bit of a money factor that goes into it there. When I retired, I contacted them and I said, I think I need to get some different kinds of treatment, and, what are your opinions? And basically I was funneled into, I really didn't have any options. They wanted me to go see this one doctor, and that's who it was going to be. And, it was like, why are you sending me there? Well, you're sending me there because it's the kickbacks they get and all that other stuff. So I decided to do everything on my own, and, that needs to change. Again, I think the players' interests need to be the thing that's most important. I mean, we pay a lot of money into that union or association, and to not get the best care because you don't, the doctors responsible at the NHLPA don't know anybody but the one guy that they like to send people to. I mean, that's not right at the end of the day. So and a lot of guys end up doing it on their own, like I did, and that's unfortunate. But I never got a phone call after that in the 2.5 years since I haven't played. And there's supposed to be like an exit program and people checking in on you and all that other stuff, and it just doesn't happen. At least not for the for me. I was maybe an above average player when I played. I certainly wasn't a superstar, and maybe those high end guys do get that phone call, but obviously that's not right either. It needs to be across the board, and everyone should be treated the same way with the same amount of interest in their well-being. And that has to change too. And it's funny, when I started doing all these interviews and articles, and there's quite a bit of interest in my story and why there was no help really from any angle at any point. I get a phone call at that point, and it's obviously, I don't need any help now. I've already got that. I figured out who my doctors are and everything else. It's almost like they're trying to cover their backs and maybe release like a press release and saying that I'm working with them and we're going to develop a program and all that other stuff. And frankly, I'm not interested. I mean, that isn't how change happens. I mean, that's how they keep the, they keep the course that they're on going, and that's not what's in the best interest of the players. So again, I mean, that the more that I'm able to talk and share my story, it forces people to recognize it, especially in Canada. I mean, it's so big. Hockey, the NHL is so big there that every time I say something, it's going to get published. And really at the end of the day, it's just based on sheer numbers and me continuing to talk about it, something's got to change. Yeah,
I mean, as we've kind of said, that the message extends to other sports, and obviously football, soccer's the king over here, where hockey is in Canada. And one of the things that, again, struck me from your Players Tribune piece is, obviously, I mean, you were the first overall pick in the OHL draft And, that's no mean feat. You kind of point to that people were like, well, there's something not right, but he's doing it on the ice, so maybe the method's insane, but work. And there's a kind of really backwards attitude that seemed to maybe develop for some people.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that was the problem that really stood in the way of people looking into me as a child, because I was such a good player that nobody could believe that it could be that bad for me at home. And, my dad, like I mentioned earlier, it's the abuser it's typically a person who's calculated, especially if it's able to go on for years at a time, because odds are if you're not smart enough to hide it, you're going to get caught, you're going to do something in public, and then it's over. But, my dad he was smart enough to know to be social, at the arena, or, to make sure that he was, a seemingly normal parent when he was around other people. And, that was all part of the plan to hide everything. And, I changed teams quite frequently, way more than, the average kid. So that was another way, to move to a new team, new set of people. Nobody really knows, and that's just what a lot of those people do. So it's hard to really, I guess, it takes somebody to really look and step up, and the first time they suspect anything, to try to do something about it. Because if you wait a year, maybe that kid's gone on another team and it's too late. But it was always something that, kind of just got overlooked a little bit, because I was such a good player. And, I'm sure there's tons of kids that experience something similar to me. You just never hear about those stories, because the odds of the kid actually making it to the NHL or to the top of any sport, they're so small to start with. And when you combine having to go through a difficult childhood, it's basically impossible. So again, that's another reason why I chose to do all this stuff, is I am someone who experienced it firsthand, and I'm able to get the attention that the topic deserves.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously maybe a major part of it, that you don't always get the prominent figures speaking out about difficult issues like this.
Yeah, and a lot of times it's because they don't have any, and that is probably a major reason why they're so successful. They had parents that supported them and loved them, and it's a healthy childhood is going to breed success, whether it's sports or anything else. And, that's really why you don't ever hear about these stories, is the people that experience the horrific childhood. They don't rarely turn out to have a good life, or to be happy, or to be successful in anything, sports or otherwise. So again, it's even more important that, despite the fact that I'm doing fine now, I'm happy, I have my own family, I'm healthy, but it's not about me anymore. It's about trying to, get the help for people, kids, try to teach the parents. And also, I've had tons and tons of people who are adults want to, contact me and share their own experience, and wish that there was something that existed when they were young that could have helped them. So it all ties together, and, that's what I want to do, is to make sure that at least, you're never going to stop the crazy people, but you can diminish the number of them, and that's the goal.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned that you've had a lot of people reach out to you, and I know you're quite new to the social media thing, and obviously there's the kind of the bad points, and the people who just, I don't know, they just can't see sense, maybe, if that might not even be a strong enough way to put it. But in general, have you found it quite a positive experience in terms of reaching out to other people and helping, start the conversation about abuse and so forth?
Yeah, I mean, it's been the best decision I've made, as far as trying to, promote the story and what it can do for other people. I didn't have any social media before my book came out, so it's been about a month, and, I've had, thousands of people contact me, and, I've had 2 people that have been idiots on there that I've just had to block. and get rid of, and that's normal. I mean, that's the internet. I think I knew that going into it, but
yeah, for sure.
I've really enjoyed it. It's there's really no other way for people to just basically you search somebody's name, and if it's there, then you're able to contact them. And that's perfect for what I want to do. And I've been able to line up a bunch of my clinics and stuff through that. And, again, just talking with people. And so many people have experienced something similar to me, and they don't really, sometimes it takes somebody to talk about it first to make other people feel comfortable enough to share their own experiences. And that's kind of been what I've seen through Twitter, and I think it can be a really powerful tool.
I mean, you mentioned a couple of things you're doing, and obviously, as you mentioned before, you've been helping Dan Carcillo with his Chapter 5 organisation. Of course, Dan had a good NHL career with Chicago and Philadelphia, among others, and unfortunately, the reasons why he started Chapter 5 are obviously tragic, but he's trying to do some good work there now to help in that regard. Where can people find out more about the work you're doing and get in touch with you about clinics and meetings and so forth?
Well, I'm working on a website which will make it a lot easier. But honestly, the easiest thing to do is to go on Twitter. You can contact me, or my publisher for my book is HarperCollins. If you contact them, I'll find out about it. And the gentleman who helped me write the book, his name is Garrett Joyce. And he's a hockey writer in the Toronto area. Really anything like that is the easiest way to get in touch with me. And I mean, they're at this point, as soon as that website goes up, I can tweet that out, and I think it would be a little bit easier. But I'd prefer to talk to the people one-on-one anyways. I set aside quite a bit of my free time to handle everything personally. And, I have an assistant that can do some of the scheduling work, but I prefer to do all the interaction myself. And, like I said, Twitter is the easiest place to find me.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Thank you very much for joining me today, Patrick. It's been great to have you on. It's obviously a very difficult subject to start the conversation about, but obviously the good work you're doing is trying to break down some barriers there. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Thanks for, being somebody that's trying to, help kids, certainly with what you've done already. But I mean, the fact that you'll have me on and help spread the message, that's what this is all about. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, it's, and you alluded to this is something that spreads not just in hockey, it's all sport and other walks of life too. So it's an important message. So I've been honoured to have you on, and I really appreciate taking the time out to join me today.
Anytime, Rob. Take care.
Thanks.
One.
Puck short.
That brings us to the end of this week's show. Thanks again to Patrick O'Sullivan for joining me this week. You can follow him on Twitter at RealPOSullivan, and you can find his book Breaking Away on Amazon, bookshops, wherever. Anywhere you can find good hockey books, you will find Patrick's book. And if you've not already read it, I recommend you go to the Players Tribune piece he wrote last week called Black and Blue, because it is difficult to read, but it is an excellent piece. One final thing to go over. Obviously, we had a competition to win a copy of East Side Hockey Manager. Thanks to all of you who entered, and I am pleased to announce the winner is Tony Eastman, who is disguised on Twitter. Thanks very much, Tony, for your entry. The code will be with you shortly. Final piece is just a bit of housekeeping. If you want to get in touch with the show at any point, you can find me on Twitter at RobMcGregor35. You can also email the show, onepuckshort@gmail.com. You can find the blog, onepuckshort.wordpress.com, and you can like us on Facebook, facebook.com/onepuckshort. There's a lot of people doing their Christmas shopping at the moment. On the blog homepage, or any blog page, on the right-hand side, you'll see there's a little Amazon logo. It's our Amazon affiliate link. Basically, you click that, it takes you through to Amazon as normal. You do your Christmas shopping. It doesn't cost you anything extra, but when you hit pay at the checkout, we get a little kickback from Amazon. Likewise, there is a PayPal donation link if you are so inclined. You can make a little donation to One Puck Short. It helps with things like running costs, hosting costs, domain renewals, equipment that we use to make the show better, and things like that. So if you're so inclined, there's a donation button there too. As I said, it goes exclusively to the running of the show and the associated costs. So it won't change what we do or what I do, because I love what I do. But it's just there for those who want to support us, basically. Thank you very much to everybody for listening this week, and I'll speak to you all again very soon.